Disclaimer and warning statement. The views, information, or opinions expressed during the Exposing Deathcare podcast are solely those of the individuals involved and do not necessarily represent those of the host or the podcast. Content warning. This podcast contains discussions of sensitive topics related to the funeral industry, including unethical practices, trauma, and misconduct. Listener discretion is advised. The stories shared in this podcast are presented anonymously to protect the privacy of the individuals involved. Thank you for listening, and we hope that by sharing these stories, we can work together to improve the funeral industry for everyone involved. Welcome to Exposing Deathcare, the podcast that pulls back the curtain on the funeral industry, revealing the truth behind its darkest practices. I'm your host, Em, and each episode we bring you real stories from funeral directors and death care workers who have experienced the best and worst of this hidden world. Once again, before we dive in, a quick disclaimer. The stories shared on this podcast are anonymous and may contain sensitive content. Listener discretion advised. Voices in today's audio have been altered in order to protect the privacy of the interviewee.
And what initial should I be using for you today?
Oh, just use ABC.
All right.
It's easy enough.
Welcome to the show, ABC. Let's start with telling us how you got into the industry. Like, what inspired you?
So, personally, I had no initial intention to end up in this. I, like a lot of my generation, just went to college because we were told to. I went for biology, and I took some forensic classes. When I got out into the workforce looking for work, there's a medical system around here that you can just go do hospital work. So I ended up doing autopsy there, and I've gone from there.
How long did you work in that role?
I have over 10 years still in it.
Nice.
Yes. So
Awesome.
still available.
Awesome. So what was the training like when you get into the field like that? Do they just kind of let you loose, or do you actually have somebody that you can shadow?
So shadow-wise, before I started working there, that was like a big deal. Every other job I had applied to, they were like, yay, nay, and just like out the gate, because a lot was like laboratory work or just, let's say, a local museum, just all over the place. They just take you or leave you. This was the first job I applied to that they were like, we want you to come in and see this work. So to me, that intrigued me. I was like, ooh, okay, this will be fun. I showed up, nothing bothered me. It wasn't too scary for me. And once I started working there, the girls with me had loads more experience. The way pathology is watch one, do one, teach one. So training was quick, and you definitely get baptism by fire.
Oh, yeah, it sounds like, oh, man.
I assume it's same in your direction as well.
Yeah, I'm glad that they at least gave you a tour and encouraged you to come in first, because I know that's the quickest way to run somebody off that can't handle it, either, physically or with the senses.
Oh, yeah.
Well, you're here for a reason today. We kind of do the bad first, and then we'll close out with something good.
Ooh, my biggest one, money. Money, personally. When I first started, $32,000.
Annually?
Yes. And I was struggling.
No, this is 10 years ago, right?
Yeah. But
still shitty pay.
Still not great.
And no, not even cost of living equivalent.
Nope. So I was definitely working more. And there were still weekend duties, like, because we were mainly Monday through Friday, but if special circumstances come in on the week, like just, there were still times that I still had to be there. So I was doing my best, working a lot. It gets better, but usually you have to look at other locations. It's real tough sometimes, but you gotta search around if it's not working for you. One of the biggest things with this field, I'd say, is getting experience and networking, even if it's for a couple years, like just a year and a half, 2 years. That's sometimes worth it to meet someone who could help you learn something new that gets you a foot in the door somewhere else. It's all necessary, as tough as it is.
Yeah, it's the same way in the funeral industry. You have to hobnob in order to get anywhere.
What is starting pay for you guys? I'm curious now.
I will tell you that my first salary job was $29,500. And it's an interesting situation. So this particular funeral home had a thing called Chinese overtime.
What does that mean?
Yes. Well, it means halftime, which is the more PC way to say it, but I was introduced to it the other way. What that is they take your salary and they average it out to what the 40 hours a week would be, how much your hourly rate would be. That put me around $7 and something, right? So they take that $7 and they cut it in half. So the half is $3.50. So for every hour I worked over 40, I got $3.50.
Mhm.
Not 7 plus $3.50, just $3.50 additional.
Oh,
It was
that's so
terrible.
wrong.
Yeah. And people wonder why I'm so fed up.
Well, it's everyone I've run into, because I was polling some of my friend groups before doing this,
Mhm.
just collectively money. Money is just such a whack thing in this industry, no matter what area you're in of it. And I understand it's very much like I think of stage crew for like a theater setting. You're behind the scenes, no one's seeing you
Yes.
really. And that's fine. I don't need like a doctor or a nurse pat on my back, claps, applause. Here's a gift card. Oh, you did great. But you still need paid to survive. And
Mhm.
it's so many of us have 2, 3 jobs, pick up this on the weekends, cut lawns, just anything to just get by.
Yeah, we don't want side gigs. We really want to devote ourselves to our career and then also our families or our outside interests.
And I think a big thing with this kind of work is a lot of it's on call. There's a lot of pickup going on because you don't predict death.
Oh.
That is just something that I think for a lot of people, because I've, in my time, trained how many people. I've been very upfront. Whenever you have a kid that's like, they're handling visually well, but then they see a string of suicides or a string of babies, and you could tell they're not handling it well. You have that
Mhm.
conversation. This might not be the place for you. But then you also have to talk to people about just work life balance, your family. There are things that you just have to sometimes put on hold. And I don't think that's explained or upfront. But there's no one to do this work. Like, there's so few of us. Well, you just can't let people be biohazards sitting places. Like, it is
Mhm.
your duty as this kind of worker to perform your job. And it's like a very much rock and a hard place because you love what you do and you want to help the community in this kind of like behind the scenes manner, but it does not feel sometimes very rewarding in a sense.
Yes, I completely resonate with that. How has it been, um, even going back to 10 years ago, uh, as a female presenting person in the industry?
I mean, personally, I have seen in my time, it's always been female dominated, which is interesting.
Nice.
And when I talk to older women, I get told of the Scully effect. If you probably know what that is, X Files, Dana Scully's character.
Carry on.
I
Tell us what it is.
So what? There's a character on the show X Files. She's a forensic pathologist, and she does not believe in aliens. And her partner, whoever David Duchovny's character was, he's like, oh yeah, aliens are real, dude, totally real.
Mulder?
Mulder, yeah, Mulder. And it's just them adventuring around the country, just running like a very supernatural show. Like, just here's your monster of the week, monster of the week, monster of the week. And a lot of women saw her like this powerful woman just going out, just kicking ass. Not that you're kicking ass of aliens in real life, but just this woman with this background doing this. And in turn, there's like statistics that show this inspired many women to go into pathology, general forensics, police work, and it's just very interesting. But a lot of the older women I worked with fall in that category a bit. You had that era was like Silence of the Lambs. You had Clarice. You had Scully. I missed all that. I was totally accident rolling up in here.
What about Dr. G, medical examiner?
I never really watched. This is a very good point. Yeah, I never really watched this kind of stuff growing up. My
Hmm?
parents very much into it. I have always felt personally just the glorification of it was kind of weird. And I saw this among people when COVID hit, like the
Oh my God,
podcast, the
yeah.
TV shows. I refuse to watch that Netflix show Dahmer. I just think it's so wrong
Oh
to
yeah.
just the way that people get into it. And you can like psychologically look at people like who would send the serial killers letters. You have these crazy women. Why do they like these serial killer men? They're doing something dangerous like motorcycle riding. You're doing this caveman instinct thing of like, oh, they're dangerous. They'll do this crazy thing. They will be a survivor. I think that's why women particularly draw to this because they're like, oh my God, it's just so different and mysterious. I think it's disgusting. I absolutely think it's disgusting. Never been a fan of it.
Yeah.
One of the only things I can actually stand, there's a podcast called Buried Bones. I forget, there's a man and a woman who run it, but they'll take number one, very old cases, and number two, the one guy did like forensic work for years, and the other lady's like an investigator, book author. Like they're very much in the background, have the knowledge. They're not just like two dudes on a couch BSing. It's tough to find for me personally media that is stomachable and not just like, here's a bunch of gory murder. Because then I have friends that are just like nurses or engineerings and psychology, whatever they are at. And just whenever you see that in real life, it's not pretty. It's not some kind of like fascinating. You feel bad. And I look back to whenever I've worked with certain kind of fellows, and you see some odd case. Initially, they're like, oh my God, this is so cool. I've never seen this. Wait, this is a baby that was drowned by their father in a bathtub. Like, you have that moment of, this is different. It's new to me, but a tragedy occurred. And I think we in the field understand that, because we're like, oh, there's a family behind this. There's people still left behind. This is a big deal. But the public doesn't feel that, see that. They're not in that. So I think that is why there's such like an ease of everyone to just, I listen to podcasts before I go to bed, or I watch murder documentaries in bed. That's great. I don't know how you sleep at night.
I can tell you that I used to listen to like Dateline NBC on the podcasts to fall asleep. And then after I had traumatic episodes throughout COVID, I couldn't do it anymore. I was like, I don't want to hear this. I don't want to hear these things. I have to, go through my day absorbed in death and destruction. I don't want it in my head at night.
Yeah, and I even personally quit reading and watching local news because I didn't want to know how many cases I would walk into. I would have friends would text me like, hey, did you hear about this? Was like down the street from me last night. Did you hear about this? I was like, no, just please. I had to have like a PSA to my buddies, be like, do not ask me about this. And it's like, I've never had personal like difficulties with this job, like mentally. Like, there's people I've known who have had like really bad PTSD. They have nightmares or like night terrors. Like protecting peace of yourself. And I just very much, I think it's important that if you're going to go into this kind of work, to not immerse yourself in it. There's been people I worked with who will cut the goriest cases all day, say they go home to watch this, listen to that. I don't know how they sleep at night. I don't know how they can just 24/7 have that turned on in themselves. And I had professors in college, because I had a couple general like forensic courses within my major, and we had professors talk about things, because I think one of them used to be a policeman or police adjacent. He'd just be like, if you're like walking around at night, just be aware of your surroundings. If you're on the bus, someone seems suspicious, start memorizing clothing. If you're in an alley, don't walk in alleys. And like just little things like that cause like just a mild paranoia in life, but they're not dumb. I feel like if I just immerse myself constantly in this content, I would be looking everywhere. Oh, this man in the pizza shop, he looks suspicious. What kind of shoes do you have on? How tall are you? What color's your hair? Like that kind of lifestyle. I'd go crazy doing that.
I can understand that, immersing yourself in it, because one of my autistic special interests has been deathcare, and that's why I've become so good at it and educating people. But 2022, I was like, I don't want to do this anymore, because you have to run the social media. You're doing a lot of communication with people, both by phone interviews and on your social media. It swallowed me, and it led to burnout along with a couple of other things. So if anybody out there is listening and you have absorbed yourself in this, I completely understand, but do consider other hobbies.
Well, that's a very good point, because I've asked people who've been in the field longer than me, like, do you think one day you're just going to snap and be done? And I've thought about that personally, because nothing's bothered me yet, but what if I have some kind of case where it comes by, I'm like, I've had it, I'm done, no matter how long I've been in this. What will be my 180? Or will I just do this forever and just be able to shut it off? Because when I got into this, I was even told, like, I saw a couple, like, different kind of cases, and who I was working with said, none of this bothers you, none of this smells. I said, no, I'm good. And they told me, oh, you're in the right place then. We hope to keep you around. Like, usually something messes with people. And as I've gone on and gone through time, we've kept in touch, and they're like, if nothing's bothering you, there's like, I don't know if it's like we have something turned off in our brain or we can just push it aside, but I'm in the right place, and I do feel that. It's just, I do worry if one day, because just seeing carnage every day isn't probably the best thing for anybody. But at what point do you kind of take that final step back? Maybe I'll just go, like, I always tell my buddies, because they've asked me to, they're like, does anything bother you, like, horrendously? I was like, I don't know, but if I ever just Ralph Waldo Emerson myself and like build a log cabin in the woods, just leave me be. I said that'll be my point that I hit.
How is mental health handled in your career, and how has it been handled over the last 10 years? Like, do you all see therapists? Do they provide anything for you?
Some places I've worked have like just not on the insurance of the workplace, but like a group, because of they know what we're working in. They're like, hey, if we all see a funky case, talk to these people. Some places I've worked, and like this is another good spot to bring up. Collectively, everyone I've ever worked with, we all understand that we can't go home to husband, wife, mom, dad, and talk about this. You can't bring this up over dinner sometimes and be like, guess what I saw today? It's not like a school teacher. It's not like someone in engineering saying like, I fixed this today. This isn't something to share. And it usually shouldn't be. There are very few good things you'll see, but it's not appropriate. And we've all very much, at least in my experience, whether I've had a good relationship with the coworkers or not, we've always been comfortable being like, hey, that was kind of wild. Let's talk about it. Because you can't go home with that. And I've been very lucky. Everyone I've worked with has kind of had the idea of leave that work at work. And we all don't like to take that home to children or spouses because it's wrong to do that. There are people that will ask you like educational questions with general interest, and you have people just being sickos. And I learned very quickly, I usually lie about what I do until I get to know somebody and have an idea of like what direction they take it. Um, is it morally right? Yeah, no, but I don't care. It's just,
Right.
I think, better for people though, because then they'll just start going down a rabbit hole of creepy things. And I have buddies that work EMS, and we've always said to each other, like, we've jokingly been like, what's the worst thing you've ever seen? And we're like, I hate that question, but I'll tell you because you understand. Like, you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
That kind of thing is fine, but I have had to educate a lot of people once they find out what I do. They're like, oh, what's the most wild, disgusting thing? And I'm like, I need you to take a step back from that and look at your. I want you to
Yeah.
analyze that, and then let's talk about this, and then I'll give you a second to marinate, and then I'll give you a redo and see if you're gonna ask me that again. And most people do not bring it up anymore because they understand that, oh wait, maybe I messed up and shouldn't be asking that.
Yeah, I hate that question too. And when people ask me that, I get a flood of memories of multiple families that come to mind or multiple situations. I don't want that flying through my head every time somebody, tries to ask me that question. I don't know how other people feel about it, but I hate it. Why do you got to pick the worst possible thing to ask me about?
I've had, this has been a conversation in like every workplace I've ever had. I have people I've worked with that are like, yeah, I'll tell them the sickest stuff in the world. And I'm, okay, if that's how you're rolling, and that is an educational moment because you might scare the person. That's one thing. But I like to lean more towards educating the person on understanding what they're asking. And if I feel comfortable enough with them, I'll talk about it. Because, again, nothing has bothered me horrendously I've worked with. I just understand that, like, life sucks sometimes. This is horrible. This happened. I will move on and just feel bad for these people. But I know a lot of people, though, have internalized a lot and they just aren't good with handling it. So that's just such a terrible thing to ask them. I don't know. Just be careful with your words, everyone.
Yeah, for real. Um, eh, is this one of those questions? It probably is. I'm going to do it anyway. Have you ever had somebody that you knew, um, that you were suddenly finding yourself, involved with at work?
I'm very glad you asked this. So I actually have quite a few people, and it's never bothered me. There are some places I've worked that would tell us if there's anyone you know that comes by the table to just say something, and we'll get someone else down here. I have dealt with quite a few people from the funeral home industry, and I learned a really neat philosophy from them. I know I'm good at my job. I know I'm damn good at it. And some of my coworkers, I think, are not so much at times. But also, I care about the person that's there. So I will do my best job to do everything I need to do to make sure Doc can do their job well. And then this person's family gets closure. It feels very prideful for me to be able to take care of someone I know. Because I've had a lot of kids I grew up with, I've had teachers, and like people have meant a lot to me. I've had family members of my buddies. They're like, hey, this happened, just letting you know. And in the morning, I make a point to grab that case off the docket first thing. And it doesn't bother me. There are some people that just, I don't want to see them like that. I don't know, no. But I think if you have the kind of philosophy of like, I am someone's final caretaker, or at least one of them, it's a very nice moment to have that you are doing this wonderful act for them and their family.
That, again, resonates with me, and I'm sure it resonates with other people that are working in death care as well. It's kind of like the way I described it to people is that, everybody has a life story, and you're at that final chapter before it says the end. And that final chapter is where just everything wraps up. And you are, even in a minuscule amount, a part of this individual's story. And that brings me a lot of pride.
No, I totally agree because, and I make sure like I've had times that I've gotten family members of people that I know and I don't let them know that I took them because I just feel unless they've asked me personally, because I've had that, they're like, can you do my grandma? But if it's someone that I know, I'm like, I just feel better. This person over here kind of crack-a-lax on their job. I want to make sure this is done right. So I've definitely done that before.
So that's kind of along the lines. Well, I hear a lot of funeral directors or a lot of embalmers say, my daddy died and I went right to the funeral home and I embalmed him. Wow. Holy wows. There's no way. Even as much as I loved a couple individuals in my family, there's no way that I could do that to them. The embalming process, the aftercare, absolutely, all day long. That would be my forte. But the invasiveness of the embalming process, to me, I can't unpersonalize that person. I can't separate myself from that. So that's kind of why I wanted to ask, about that, because I didn't know if it was something that carried over into the other fields of death care.
I've not had a parent pass, and after I had some kids I grew up with come by, people I worked with asked, like, would you be okay with, like, your mom or dad or, like, your sister or brother coming in? And I don't have an answer because I've never been in that situation. I would like to think that someone else would be able to step in that moment if I am like, this is too much. But also, I know I do a good job. That's a very weird spot. And of the funeral home people, I have constantly also heard, my mom died and I had her right away. Grandma died and I was the one who did it. And I think to a point, there should be a little bit of a veil of separation, like your close sector of family and friends. And I've been lucky enough that I've not had like that most inner circle come by yet. Outer people, it has still felt like a service to the community. I do not know how I'd act with that at all.
Yeah, it is. It's one of those deep thoughts that you don't want to have. So,
Yeah.
what is a typical? I mean, obviously there are no typical days in death care, but what would a typical day for you be like?
For us, most places I've been, I call it general roll call. You make sure the computer matches the cooler. That who's in there should be in there, and there's no miscellaneous. How did you get in here? Kind of person. So you do that, make sure everyone's where they should be, and then you just pull paperwork off the printer or out of your emails and just see who's ready for autopsy, who's just getting a general. Some cases we just do fluids on, so who's getting cut, who's just getting looked at, and get paperwork together. Start printing out cassettes for each case. Usually just Doc comes back on their own accord, and you just start rolling at whatever pace Doc wants. I'm at the mercy of whoever's in charge.
Yeah, I can understand that. So, something I just thought about when I worked in Texas, there was a medical examiner office that they transferred from one place to a brand new facility. And when they did that, they took their long-term residents with them. Do you have a long-term resident that is in y'all's care that is either unidentified or unable to find family?
There are, I think, quite a few. Because there are like multiple coolers, and I think there's a couple bone bags of just they were found either in the river, in a creek, in the woods, in the mountains. Just they were somewhere and just had nothing identifying, no wallets, no nothing. And I don't know how. Probably early 2000s. I can't remember the age on them critters.
Whoa. Yeah, I feel
But
like it was about the same.
Yeah, but like
there.
I feel like it's definitely at this point, what we're 24 years into the new millennium, like you could have no one left for these people. That's a possibility.
Yeah.
And I have definitely before been told to grab the bone saw and cut some bone out of the femur so we could send it for DNA. I can't remember if it was one of them or just another set of bones we got in, but I've done that multiple times. Some of them stay, some of them go. They figure it out. Sometimes they don't. Yeah, it's just a little sad because like you'll go in there, you're like getting rid of people. Someone's going to the funeral home, someone's getting cremated, in out, and someone just they occupy that corner, and that's where they have been, and that's where they will be. And you're like, aw, sorry, buddy. And like personally, it's a little weird. Some people I've worked with are like this, some are not. I have always talked to my bodies. Some places that I've worked, I'm the only person in the room for a bit. Like Doc will come in and out, but sometimes it's just me and the dead person. If I'm moving around and like playing Tetris in the cooler, I'll talk to them. You bump someone off the wall, it'll be like, I'm sorry, bucko. Just I talk to them. I think it helps to humanize, and that's another really good point. I've worked with people that I can definitely tell have been dehumanized by this experience.
Oh yeah,
it's not a good thing. And when I train people, I just always tell them, just remember, this is a person, even though they're dead. I don't believe in ghosts, which we can get to that because I'm actually curious about your theories. I don't believe in ghosts. Never seen anything in all of my days, but it's still a person. I would expect the same respect. So like I just chat with them. You're just moving them around. Oh, sorry, buddy, let me move. I gotta pull your arm up. I gotta do this. Gotta do that. Oh, you really need to give up this organ. You're sticking in there. I think that is kind of sick as it sounds. Humanizes the experience.
Yes.
Some people look at it and they're like, "What are you doing over there?" I'm like, "We're having a con," because like they'll be like, "Are you talking to me or your body over there?" I'm like, "I'm talking to little John Doe over here. Mind your business." But I think it's just interesting, and like those bone bags. I would always talk to the bone bags because I felt so bad for them because I'm like, oh, you're just hanging out in here probably longer than I've been alive at this point, some of them, and you feel bad for them. But back to the ghost thing, because I
Oh,
always
yes.
like to play this game with people. I've worked in this as long as I have. I've done cases at 3 a.m. sometimes. I've never seen a damn thing. Have you? Do you have coworkers? Because I have some coworkers that are like, I've seen the way pan fall off, and I've seen shadows. I'm like, you're full of it. So, what are your
No.
experiences?
So the most memorable one to me, and it's got explanation, like, but it's still it's stuck. Um, Back when I was a student, I was working at a funeral home that had a courtyard. So when people would come in, they'd go to the left to go into the viewing rooms and the visitation rooms or the arrangement rooms. And if they walked to the right of the courtyard, they'd go to the chapel. And the chapel door had these like kind of like foggy stained glass windows, that would be about half the door and up on like a quarter of the door. And you could see inside vaguely because it's the like frosted glass or whatever. And there was a lamp. And the thing with the funeral homes, and I hope this is still a thing today, it hasn't been at some of my past employers, but when they had a body in state, they would turn on a lamp light that people from the street could see. So that way they would know that the funeral home had someone in their care. And this was usually started out in smaller towns and things like that. So they had the lamp light on. Us students like to continue traditions and things that we find interesting. So we had that lamp on. We had a service there during the day. It was time to close up. People had left the visitation room. So really, it was only the immediate family in the visitation area where they had snacks and stuff. And then again, on the opposite side of the building, we needed to go check and make sure that the chapel was locked up. So the other staff members that were there were 2 other students. They were both behind the reception desk when I went outside around the courtyard to go check the door on the chapel. And as I am bebopping along, no cares in the world, I get to that door and I go to reach for it was a ornate metal handle. So it had like some protrusions on the knob part, And when I grabbed the door handle, I saw a shadow move in front of the lamp, and I swear the knob turned the opposite way in my hand. I don't know if I freaked myself out. I don't know if somebody from the family group from the visitation had come around the chapel on the backside, but I didn't stick around to find out. I ran back. But that's really been the only thing that's happened to me. I've heard things from other funeral directors, like they hear disembodied voices or they saw a shadow, but all humans are energy, and maybe that can do something at the end, but I don't know. I wouldn't want to hang out at a funeral home if I was dead. I'd want to go somewhere else.
I know. I do have a funny story I've remembered.
Yes.
A buddy of mine, their grandparents, their grandmother had passed away. No, it was grandpa. Grandpa passed away. And they were Russian Orthodox. I grew up Roman Catholic. Now I'm atheist. I don't religion anymore. But I was like, we grew up together. I'm off work. Let me go. So some of us went. And they're saying some kind of hymn chant thing in Russian. And we're all just kind of looking around. And like, this is a very old funeral home. We've all had family there at some point. And the lights start flickering. And someone's great uncle, grandpappy is like, oh, it's grandpap. Grandpap is with us again. Did my best to hold it together because I was like, oh, dear God, what the heck am I into? And then all these people are becoming like fanatical. They're like, oh my God, he's here with us. So then I just take a little scoot out the door and go take a walk. And there's a couple people with a funeral home there, and I'm looking at them and I'm like, does this happen often, bud? And they're just like, no, it does not. I was like, I'm taking a bathroom break. And I came back, a couple of my buddies were like, what the heck just happened? But for me, I was like, that's interesting. Like, whether it was a ghost or not, that place has been here since my grandparents were kids, so I know it's the electrical work. But wow, like that was just a very powerful thing for them as a family, and if that helps them give them closure, great. I very much in that moment was like, I shouldn't be here. I was not meant to be part of this situation.
Yeah, this is a family affair now.
Yeah, I was like, I gotta go.
What is a story from your career that brings you great pride or that really impacted you?
Just in a general sense, I have more appreciation for my life than I ever have. Like growing up as a kid, I think my era, just the news. We had like 9/11 going on. There's war. There's always something. And I feel like it when you're little, you're like, no one has control over anything. The adults don't even know how to be an adult. No one knows what's going on. Each day is different. And it sucks once you realize that you think adults have all the answers. They know everything all the time. Once you realize that your parents are still kids, they don't know what's happening day to day either. They're just kind of rolling with it. And they're just this being that you always saw as godly. But once that facade drops and you're like, oh, we're in this together. Like, we're on the same playing field. Okay, we're all confused. Great. It like kind of brings everything down a level. You're like, oh, okay, so this is what it means to be like an adult in life. Great. Okay, I'm 12 and I figured this out. Okay. So like you definitely have like just some kind of like brooding thoughts of like, oh man, is it always this is kind of funky. But I got into the field and I'm just like, man, I spent a lot of time just like bitching and moaning and just being like, harumph, this is funky. And life is so short. You see people come in, they're 3 years old and they just had chronic diseases all of their 3 years of life, and it just takes them out. Meanwhile, I'm in my mid-20s, late 20s, and I was sitting there complaining. And it very much brings a new perspective to things. And like friends of mine who are into the murder podcast and all that, and the ones that are not, they ask me, how do you deal with seeing this every day and just act normal and just not be weird? Because I very much say there are people that work in this field that you can look at them and how they dress and how they act, and you're like, you work in this. There's that like goth-centric kind of ideal. And then there's people that I work with in this field that you couldn't tell them off the street that they work in this. I feel like I dress pretty normal. I'm not very much on the goth area, but I've just always, I don't know, just you got to appreciate every single day the people in your life and the sentiment of tell the people you love every day that you love them. The group of friends I've grown up with, we've known each other most of our lives. Even my buddies from college that we've kept in touch with for like, what are we at, like 12 something plus years. Just let them know every day that you care about them or like make time for each other. And I'm just always someone that even when I'm like, oh, we go to the park and do this, or we go see a movie, or we go here, my brain will just have like snapshots of things that happen. It's like, oh, we all managed to come to this event. This is great. Or I was at a concert earlier this summer with some friends. I like kind of like this artist. I'm like so on it. But we were front row. We were on the barriers. And my friends had like posters. And this artist came over and was just like pointing at them and smiling, just like it was directing at them and like was acknowledging everything that they had made for this artist. And I saw like, what was it, 5 or 6 of them, just that happiness, that joy, that just the lighting up of all of them. I wish my brain could have taken a picture. And I told them that after. I was like, it was so like a beautiful moment, like a Renaissance painting. There's all this chaos, people are jumping and running around, and these people that I know, you're just so happy. And it's just so nice to see. And I feel like so many times people just go through the humdrum of life and they're like, everything sucks all the time. I don't appreciate it. This sucks. Everything could always be better. I could have more money. I could do this. I could do that. At the end of the day, Matt, do you have friends and family you care about? Are you healthy? Can you go for a walk? Can you do that? Like, so little truly matters in life. And I feel like too many people have this, I don't have a Corvette and I don't have a hot tub at my house and I could be doing this or I could have went to Bermuda last year. Just this shoulda, coulda, woulda. Appreciate and love what you have right now and what you can do with it, because so many people just squander that, just worrying about what they could have had and been.
Yes. Very good advice. Sound information.
I don't. What
Well,
about for you? Or are we out of time?
No, we got a second. What brought me great pride was introducing families to more hands-on care with their loved one, whether it was the idea of a home funeral or decorating the cremation container or, shrouding their loved one and decorating them with flowers or decorating a grave. And to know that I had an impact on other funeral or other death care professionals that now talk about green burial and things like that. The other day, I saw one of my pictures pop up on a completely different state's conservation burial page, and I was like, that looks really familiar.
Mm-hmm.
And they even tagged me in the thing, and I saw it later, and I was just like, I had an impact, and that nobody can take that away from me.
Mm-hmm.
Other professionals may dislike me in this industry because of what I do and what I've done, but the takeaway is that I had an impact, whether it was on the general public or it was a colleague. So that's my story.
Oh, I agree. Just kind of like the thanklessness of this job, as much as sometimes it feels Like, it sucks. I think we overlook it a bit. Like, it's nice to be kind of in the shadows working and just, you don't have to be front and center. You can just
Yes,
do
be
this
behind
work.
the scenes.
Yep, just do this work and be proud of what you've done. You don't need all the applause for it, and just be happy within yourself. I think that's like its own intrinsic thing of just learning your own self-happiness. And I think definitely working in this has helped me with that personally. But that's just me.
I thought of one more thing I got to ask that some people are going to want to know. If somebody wanted to get into your field, what is your best advice?
My best advice, probably go to school for biology or chemistry, get a hard science, and find your local coroner, ME office. Get in there young. If you're in high school and you're interested, go out shadow now. Get your name in people's mouths. It's the biggest thing you can do. And
That
just don't.
networking.
Yep, networking. Just don't be scared. This field is not for everyone, and that's okay if it's not for you, because there are a lot of other things that you can do to be helping people. But if you know this is what you want, you make efforts now. Get it done. If you want to go to medical school, get in touch with people and just network all day, every day. It's because I have so many of my buddies are like, that would have been cool to do. That would have been neat. And I'm like, you can't handle when cheese goes bad in your fridge, bud. So, like, you just have to be realistic with yourself. And if you think you're into it, man, go for it. Get some anatomy books. Make sure you're taking anatomy in high school. Please,
Oh,
please,
yeah.
please, oh please. Because I never had it in high school. I never had it in college. I was already doing autopsy when I took my first anatomy courses. I was
Oh,
taking them
my.
online, and
Oh, wow.
I was just very lucky that I had some decent people I was working with that I was very upfront with. Like, hey, this is all I know. And they're like, you know what? It's fine. Just if you truly want to be here and you truly want to be doing this, you'll start picking up some books. And I did. And it was the best thing I ever did. I'm very happy that I'm in this field. Because every field has its difficulties. I don't care where you're at, what you're doing. And it very much seems like not enough people are going into this. But if you want it bad enough, you will make it happen and manifest that. So just do what you got to do to just get yourself out there.
Excellent. Thank you for being here today, ABC, and sharing your stories. It was a great interview.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. You're very cool.
Thanks.
Thank you for tuning in to an episode of Exposing Deathcare, the podcast. I truly appreciate your support and the courage of those who have shared their stories with us. If you or someone you know has a story to share, we encourage you to reach out. Your anonymousness will be protected, and your story could help prevent further harm. You can leave comments, ask questions, or provide feedback on our social medias, Exposing Deathcare, or email exposingdeathcare@gmail.com. Thank you.